How are you all doing today? Welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, which I don't know if you know, I kind of have this schedule set up now where I do interviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. I have been interviewing some fantastic people. I have some fantastic people lined up for the rest of the month, but today is an interview that I've been looking forward to personally. Of course, I love talking to people, but today I get to interview George the Giant Slayer. George, you might have heard that before from Friday Night Tights. In fact, that's how I got to know him, and I got to talk to him a few times on Tuesday Night Main Event, which is a Geeks and Gamers Tuesday. It's Tuesday night, so it's probably tonight as well. And I know. Without further ado, let me bring on George. George, welcome to the show. How are you today, sir?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on, Adam. I love your show. We've
Oh,
talked a lot
thank you,
on
thank you.
off. Great to make as a friend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a pleasure, George. You've got some really great points, and actually, I quote some of your videos. In fact, just recently, I was talking about free speech and the Ministry of Truth, and you had a great video on this. And after the credits, you had this fun story about your bapo.
Yeah,
Is
my
it bapo?
papu. Yeah,
Your
it's
bapu,
papu.
yeah, bapu. It was great though. The wisdom that he carried. It's like, yeah, we have to allow that, or because I don't remember exactly the phrasing that you chose, but I use it. It's a great story, and it's true,
Thank
right?
you.
Free
Yeah, no,
speech is
no,
free speech.
it is because when we were sitting there standing at the Thanksgiving Day parade, I mean, I saw the Klan. And
Yeah,
back in the 80s, they were prevalent everywhere. I mean, you could see them at parades, they get permits, and they'd be around. And I had just written a book report about World War II and its impacts and then disparate groups. And so I was
yeah,
like, look, bad guy.
yeah,
Kind of like, and he's like, shh. And I'm like, what is it? And I'm talking back and forth with him. I'm like, they shouldn't be here. That's bad. That's evil. That's this. And he's like, thank God children aren't running the government.
yeah.
and he's like, you understand? He goes, you're not going to get it now. But I'm like, how can you accept that? I'm like, doesn't it upset you? Because he survived Auschwitz for 3 years. Doesn't seeing that?
Wow.
He goes, yeah, it turns my stomach, but I'd be more angry if they weren't allowed to speak. He goes, I would fight for them to speak. Because he goes, when the worst of us can't talk, he goes, one day they're going to stop you from talking. And I was like, what? He's like, you'll get it when you grow up.
That's well, yeah. There's a lot to say about what you just said there. One thing that sticks in my mind is, thank God children aren't running the government. Doesn't feel that way anymore, does it?
I think he wouldn't understand what's going on today. I mean, that
Yeah,
just even seeing that, was it the dominatrix of disinformation? The
yeah.
song that she sang, I mean,
Oh my gosh.
thinking that somebody in an official government position would sit there and like TikTok. I don't know.
Yeah. Who do I gotta screw to get ahead?
Right. Oh God, yeah, I read that.
It's like, wow. Yeah, that's a frightening thing. But you know what? That's ple- uh, present time. That's stuff that's going on right now.
Right.
I want to know more about you, George. You have, from what I've gathered, you've had a crazy life so far.
Yep.
At least you've had some intense things that have happened to you. Um, uh, One thing that stands out is that you were kidnapped as a kid.
Correct.
Like
Yeah.
that is I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
Um, where are you from originally?
Texas. I was born in Texas. I was
Okay,
born
so
in
you're
Texas. Yep.
born in
Because
Texas.
yeah, my mother was from Germany. She had married my father after the family moved after the war here. They moved into
Okay.
Texas, and then she met my father, and she was pregnant with me, and they had gone back to Greece.
Hmm.
And before she would give birth to me in Greece, because he wanted me to be a Greek citizen, they're like, no, 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 no. We're going back to the U.S. Want my son to be an American like we are.
Yeah.
So a few years later, at about 7 years old, 6 years old, they got a divorce. 5.5, 6. It
Okay.
didn't work out. He was an abuser. So they got a divorce. And, you'd see them. If people who haven't been through divorce, you start having visitation where you see one of the parents every other weekend or every weekend, however they arrange. So I started seeing him. And
Hmm.
again, this is, when you're that age, I idolized him. It's like, because I didn't see what he was doing most of the time. I saw it once. I didn't understand. It's like, as a 4-year-old, I'd asked him, what did you do to mommy? And he's kind of like, that's adult stuff. kind of go back to your room. Anyway, so I
Okay.
see him each weekend, and then one day he says, "What do you think if you and Baba in Greek means Dad, you and Dad, we go on a trip this summer?" I'm like, "Cool." He goes, "Like going to Disneyland."
Yeah.
What kid would? Hell yeah!
Yeah, of course.
And that started to progress where it was, what do you think if we stayed a little longer than summer? You wouldn't have to go to school this year. You might do some classes while we're in Greece, let's say. So that progressed, and all of a sudden he started taking me to all these shopping malls. Let's buy some toys, fishing rods, baseball, anything you can. Just started packing these trunks in. But he kept saying, "You have to keep this a secret between me and you, because other people want to spoil our fun." But I'm like, okay. But something in me clicked
Yeah.
probably midway through summer, because he changed it from summer saying we're going to go in the winter. And it was probably around September or the end of August where I told my mom, I said, we're going to go on this trip. Are you going to be coming? And she's like, what are you talking about? So I explained the whole thing to her. Of course, I said, do not tell Dad. Because he said, you can't say anything. So I feel like I broke his secret. She
Right.
goes and tells him, and he's like, don't know what you're talking about. The kid's imagining the whole thing. He can't deal with a divorce. So it's your
Yeah.
fault. And look what you're doing to him. So then, of course, she went out and started to investigate it herself. She got
Yeah.
a lawyer. He told the school no one can pick me up except her or my grandfather or my grandmother. She went to customs. She went everywhere, going to passport control. There was no passport in my name. She called up every ticketing agency. No one said anything. They're like, there are no tickets for him.
Yeah.
No. So she thought there's something wrong with the kids imagining it. I kept insisting. No, I said, look, all you have to do is when you drop me off next time, instead of dropping me off outside of his home, just come upstairs with me. You'll see these there were trunks from floor to ceiling. That's when I realized this is not going to be a short trip.
Yeah.
So he had like a 3-bedroom apartment, and 2.5 of the rooms were filled with these, steamer trunks.
Yeah.
Again, filled with everything. So she comes upstairs, and he's like, come inside. There was nothing there. So I'm like, well.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. So he obviously figured out that that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And then when she left and I was there, it was the most uncomfortable I felt, because here you are sitting looking at the dad that you love, but feel something weird is going on, that you just admitted that you broke the secret. And he's like, it's okay. And he was so calm and nice about it. I understand your child. So long story short, I kept telling everybody, and the more that I said it, it seemed that it was, they didn't believe it. I even ended up going to this therapist where he's like, yes, he's having difficulty with a divorce, this transition. I'm like, I hate this guy. He's like, just telling me, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to be here in a month. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, because my mom, again, tried everything, but she's like, it's a 6-year-old. She even went to his friends, which, by the way, they were all coordinating to work with him, and they were hiding it from her.
Of course.
So, because you have to understand, there's like this little historical thing whenever there was a time period where whenever Greek women would marry like an American woman, and if they ended up in a divorce, you'd always hear the dad, I will never let anyone raise my son but me, my way, Greek way. And so they say, I'm just going to take my kid and take him to Greece instead of becoming corrupted. Okay. Of course, all the men were full of talk. So when they saw my father doing it, they lionized him like, what a man, which I learned that part later. So it helped him. So October 23rd comes around. My mom takes me to school. I'm like sitting here starting to cry. She's like, what are you crying for? I said, not going to see you at the end of the day. She goes, yes, you're fine. Stop talking about it. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to have a great dinner, watch a movie. I'm like, nope. So she goes, he can't pick you up. The office has a letter, all this. So 11:30 comes around. The note from the office comes to my teacher. It's like, George, your dad's here to pick you up for a dental appointment. So he gets me in the car, and we're driving to the airport, which is about an hour away, the international airport. And I was like, I really don't want to go, because he kept asking me, are you sure you want to go? I'm like, yeah, I've changed my mind. I love you, but I changed my mind. So he's like, okay, I'll make you a deal. When we get to this shopping mall, if you want to turn back, I will. Yeah. So we're driving up there, going to the Galleria, huge shopping mall, like little stories. And I'm sitting like on pins and needles, and I'm looking at him. waiting for him to ask me, do you want to turn around? Which he didn't. And when we passed, he's like, oh, did you want to turn around? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, next time. So it kept being when we reach this point, this point, this point, until we were at the airport. Then from the airport, it's like when we reach London, when we reach Amsterdam, when we reach France, and then finally we're in Greece, and that's it. So when we got there, it was the first time that I saw a different side of him, because I was like, you said we could turn around in Greece. He's
Yeah.
like, you're not going anywhere. And it's just the way he gripped my hand. He's like, let's go. It was the first time that I had ever had him touch my hand or squeeze my hand, not like a father, but like an enemy. It was like cold. It's like, this is it. It's not up for discussion.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started. He then took me about a month later, after staying in Athens, to high into the mountains of Greece. And I kept worrying, like, what are we going to do? I kept trying to run away.
Really?
Yeah. When we were in Athens, I'd go out of the house with some relatives of his. And I'm like, they'd have these little, they didn't have like stop and goes or quickie marts. They had these things, they looked more like, I forgot what they call them. You know, like in New York, how they have those little newsstands where they sell like candy or cigarettes or sodas. What's the name for those? I forgot. In
like
Greek,
I want to say bodega, but it's not. It's like
it's
a paper stand, paper
Yeah.
shack or something.
Well, those called in Greece, they're called periteras, so they're everywhere. But they have
Okay.
everything. A little, a few pieces of fruit, all the newspapers, magazines, cigarettes, desserts, whatever.
Yeah.
So I kept
Kiosk.
going.
That's a good one.
Kiosk. There you go. Kiosk.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad.
So I'd go to the kiosk, and I'd pull out some money that I'd gotten from a cousin of mine who I told the story. He's like, I'll help you. He was about 2 years older than me. So
and you're 6 at the time?
7.
7. Okay.
7. So I'm like, I love my dad. Because that was the thing, is I kept saying, I love my dad, but I don't want to be here. Like I could, especially after the way he had gripped my hand, there was just this coldness about it. I don't know how to describe it besides. It's like a stranger.
Yeah.
And it felt odd. And the fact that he kept breaking his word, which he never would have. So those things started to pile up in my brain. I'd get to a taxi. I'm like, American Embassy. Because that's what my cousin, who was like 13, said, say American Embassy. Once I got there, and he was already there.
Your dad was there?
Yeah, already there. Because his brother worked with the government and had a big construction company and owned like half the
town or whatever.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Like they knew a lot of people. And so he started telling a story, which I don't know. And that was the first time he flipped out when we got home, beat the hell out of me. After that, 2 days later, we left for the mountains, took a train, got up to the highest point in Greece, near the Bulgarian mountains, this little small town that took like 3.5 hours to wind up on the mountain roads where you're on the bus and you look down and you can see the cliff edge and the river. You're like, we get up there in this town, when the bus pulls up, it's literally like you see on the left-hand side, the butcher shop, the coffee shop. I think it was a seamstress. I never knew really what that last one was. And then on the other side was pretty much like a supply store. And then a few homes, maybe a couple hundred people in the whole thing.
Wow.
And that's when it all began. Like when he started saying, you love your father, right? I said, yes, Baba. He's like, and you don't love your mother? I said, no, I love my mother. And that was the first time he hit me. He goes, if you say that again, you're going to get hit. So that's when he goes, so I'm like, I love my mother again. So that's how it started.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm going to keep hitting you until you learn that only your father loves you. And I did this whole thing to save your life because your mother's family is corrupt and crazy. And I've risked my whole life and did all this to make sure that you have a long, healthy, wealthy, prosperous life. This whole spiel. Wow. And then it would be followed up. You love your mother? Yep. Whack. And that would just escalate until eventually he started chaining me in the basement. So when he'd say, shut up, I'd keep talking. When he'd say, be silent, I was like, if I can't control anything, I'm going to control myself.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people will ask me, like, well, did you consciously think of this as him? I don't think so. I didn't sit here going, okay, I'm now going to play games with him. No, it was just something that I did. I'd hold on to everything that was dear to me. Luke Skywalker, Captain America. It's like I kept thinking I'm going to be like Cap. Or hearing my favorite album, because he had brought a lot of stuff with us to keep my mind occupied. And when he would play the records, it was the Hobbit, I believe, the Banks records. I'd hear Gandalf's voice, and all that would keep me going. But then he realized that I was continuing to speak English, so that's when he forbade English. No more English.
Mm.
And when I was eventually brought back, and the only word I knew when I saw my family was hamburger. That's all I could remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, wait, so you can't how long like, how did
A
that
year.
happen?
A
It
year.
was
So
it was a year in the mountains or
yeah, a
uh,
year in the mountains. It was a year in
wow.
the mountains. And what happened was is that my grandfather hired all these detectives, a former guy who was like an uncle in the family, not an uncle, but you call him uncle. And he used to work for the
Yeah.
CIA, and he
This is
put
your mother's father?
my mother's father.
Okay.
And he put a team together, spent like $500,000. You're talking in 1978. It's like, we're going to get him back. The
Wow.
problem was, is that again, my father's brother knew everyone in Greece, police,
Right.
state federals. It was difficult. When I was brought back home years later, my grandmother had showed me pictures that the investigators were in the mountains, like in these suits, hiding, where they had taken pictures of me to show them that the kid is here and he's doing this and he's doing this.
Wow.
They kept trying to figure out how they were going to get me out of there, because they're like, well, we can head to the Bulgarian border, which is like 2 kilometers away, but he's 6. It has to trek through the mountains. There's no trail. It's in snow. Will he be able to do it?
Yeah.
So then my father had sent a ransom note to my mother. Of course, he, in later years, when I confronted him with this, he would say, no, 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 this was just a trick. I would never sell you because I did this all for you.
Mhm. Sure.
His whole point, I think, was he was so angry with my mother. He's like, I'm Greek. We only marry once. That's it. And you're Greek. There is no such thing as divorce. I'll never marry again unless it's us coming back together. I think he wanted her to follow him.
Mm.
And she, by what I understand, was at one time preparing to leave. And her family was saying, you can't go there. Once you get there, you're done.
Wow.
And so she actually set up a visit. It was, I think, in February. Yeah, it was in February. We came down from the mountains and went to Salonika, and I saw my mom for the first time. And they were there to discuss either them getting back together. Or she was doing whatever she could to get me out of there. But
Yeah.
she was figuring if she couldn't get me out of there, maybe I'll just get married again with him and I can protect my son. So she had the Snoopy in her hand. I won't ever forget that. And I remember when she was touching me, I was like, I have to hide my bruises because I didn't want her to feel like something was wrong. You see a kid you're still a kid. You're going like, you see your mother crying,
Yeah.
you see your dad. And my dad had told me, if you say anything, she's going to get the same. So then I'm sitting there going, okay, now I got to protect my mother. So she's like, are you
Wow.
okay? I'm like, great. I just miss you, And it was my grandfather, I think, who convinced her. That part I've always been fuzzy on. He convinced her to come back home and to figure out another way. Because my grandmother said, if she stays there, she's cooked. It's
Yeah.
over with. So they worked with the government. They did all that they could. And this continued. The beatings continued for months. Stupidly, if you might say, he was how I have the channel George the Giant Slayer. He was the first giant I stood up to and defeated. He had one of his best friends came up for a week. And of course, when a friend was there, nothing happened. So to me, it was like vacation time.
Yeah.
And they went hunting. And his friend said, you need to teach your son how to hunt. So he's like, okay, we should teach him how to hunt. So he taught me how to hunt. I couldn't always hold the rifle. It was just too heavy for me. And I had lost like 30 to 40 pounds. He's like, you're going to be fit. Your family is too heavy. So it was about 3 weeks later that I woke him up at 3:00 in the morning. I had put the 30-06 on a chair and I'm trembling and crying in tears. And I wake him up. I'm like, you're not going to hit me again. Bye-bye. I love you, but it's never going to happen or else I'm going to shoot you. He froze. And that
Wow.
was it. He never touched me again. Don't know how. I don't know if he was afraid, realized what he had become, what he had turned. And that was it. And I remember, okay,
How old were you at this point?
7.5.
Okay.
So
Wow. Seven
yeah,
and a half.
that was I was like, nope, not going to do this. Of
That's
course, there were
that's
different things
crazy
that
for
happened.
a 7-year-old. That's what a it's like you really get forced out of your childhood. Like you had
Oh,
to
yeah.
wake up. You had to grow up real quick to survive, you know?
Yeah, you
That's
do.
wow.
But it taught
So
me how to, I never wanted to be, that's one thing I think one of the reasons that I rarely would talk about is because people always try to turn you into like a victim with a poster board. I despised that. I'm like,
yeah.
it's something that I went through and I tried to learn from it everything I could to make me stronger, to make me understand people better, to be tougher, to
Yeah.
not tougher as in bully tough, tougher as in what the world is about and how to survive it.
Yeah.
But it was that moment that kind of changed everything. He never looked at me the same, and I kind of never looked at them the same. And I felt guilty the entire time. That's the thing is that's what happens when you're dealing with someone you're in a relationship with, especially a parental figure, that a part of you loves them. It creates that love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here again, like I was drenched in tears, but determined not to be hit. And I'm still apologizing to him. That was what was weird. But I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. I
I bet
think
that
that,
scared him more
I
than
think,
anything.
I think that's, like I said, the only thing I could come close to is like either created a mirror for him or he was scared shitless going, what are you going to do? If he's going to do this now, what's he going to do next? It's like at some point, because I told him, this is going to stop. I
Yeah.
said, you're going to sleep again, Baba. And he was like, looked at me. I was like, okay. He didn't
Wow.
say a word. His eyes spoke, I guess. He really didn't speak. At first, he thought he was dreaming. He kept rubbing his face. I'm like,
Yeah. So how long after that did you finally, or like how did you get
at the
back to
end,
your mother?
at the end of the summer, I think my family had had enough. And the one who was like an uncle who had worked in the CIA,
Mhm.
he showed up one day. We
In
went
the
to
mountains.
no, we went to visit for the end of summer my father's sister, and she was in Athens.
Okay.
And by this time, he had trusted me to walk out to go to the little kiosk by myself and stuff. So I went to the kiosk and I see Uncle Ted there. He's like standing there in a suit. I'm like, he's like, George. He's looking at him. I'm here to see your father. You look good. He puts his arm around my shoulder and we walk back to the house. When my father opened the door, he turned white. All I know is within 24 hours, I was in a hotel room and on a plane. And I didn't see my father again for a long time. He kind of like disappeared. Whatever Ted told him, it was just like, I've asked him before. He says, don't worry about it. He's like, I
Hmm.
dealt with it. I was like, okay.
Hmm. And this is the uncle that was in the CIA or
Yeah. Or
something.
that's what he says, or that's what they say. Used to be in the papers. I think it was in 1975 or 1980. We used to
Mhm.
have a paper in Houston called there was the Chronicle and the Houston Post. It was in the Post where it was like, I'm not going to give his last name, but it was like so and so ship owner, ship operator delivered X missiles to Libyan leader Omar Gaddafi on behalf of the U.S. government. Like he'd bring me the newspaper clippings when he'd travel. I'm like, he goes, I'm a businessman. Okay.
Wow.
So whatever he told him, which you can kind of probably figure, because what I didn't know is when we got back to the hotel, there were 4 guys who were there. And
Mm.
he goes, yeah, they were there outside of the house too. Because he
Just
had
in
it.
case.
Yeah. He's like, do I pack anything? And my dad's like, you're going to go with your Uncle Ted. I'll see you later. I'm like, what? I go to my clothes, and my Uncle Ted was like, you don't need anything. We have everything. I was like, okay.
Wow.
And about 24 hours after we were in the hotel room, after a stop back in Houston, and I'll never forget it. When you came through customs back then at Intercontinental Airport, it was like this semicircle of stairs that would wind down. and you had this like sheets of glass window so you could see everybody as you're walking down. And as I'm walking down, it's like I see my mother, my uncle, my grandfather. Of course, half are crying and half are smiling. And I was excited to see them, but I actually didn't even write about this in my book, this part. I felt like I was underwater, if that makes any sense. It was kind of numb. It
Yeah.
was a very weird, like a stranger in a strange land. It's
Yeah.
like you recognize everybody, you're thrilled, but you just weren't in touch. It was a long time. I wasn't in touch with my emotions. Like I didn't feel happiness. I understood it logically, like I'm happy, you know?
Yeah. Well, you changed. You were a different person
Yeah.
in that time. So it's
And
like all these people you have to meet again, or they have to meet you, the new you, because you had uh, obviously have gone through immense changes by what you went through. I mean, chained in a basement, holding a gun to your father to end being beaten. Like
which I still feel
that's.
guilty for sometimes as the kid, not me as an adult. It's an
Do you
odd thing.
think?
You don't want to go to that place. That's what I feel bad about.
I mean, do you think that you would have been able to pull the trigger?
I don't know. Good question. Uh, I've always been one who fights against injustice my whole life because of that. I
Yeah.
don't know. I was determined that one way or another that was going to stop.
Yeah.
Maybe he saw something that I didn't. Maybe he was too nervous that I was so shaky that I could accidentally like because I couldn't hold it. See, it was on the
Yeah.
chair and I was shaking, it wasn't I couldn't lift it by myself.
Yeah, but to bring you to that point, uh man, it had to have, shaken something inside of him to see, because you were apologizing, because you didn't want to be in that position,
Mm.
so it's like it's had to be obvious that even though you didn't wanna be there, you were there, you were at
Yeah,
that point, and it was
yeah.
his fault, and I think you should know that it was his fault because
Oh,
you were a
yeah.
child.
Yeah, I knew that, but I think it was the determination. It's like
Yeah,
that's a part of me. When I see something wrong, I face it. Whether it's something that I'm afraid of or not, that's not going to stop me. I'm going to confront it.
yeah,
So it was
wow,
it was odd. I still remember seeing all my family like they're jumping up and down. You see it in movies, but you don't really. And then when you see it happening, and I'm just kind of like looking at them, and I wore like this little suit. And when they're hugging me, it's like I was a ghost who was inhabiting a body.
yeah.
Does that
It's
make
like
sense?
almost like you were viewing it happen from,
Yeah,
disembodied spot, just watching it happen. Wow.
it
That's,
was really weird. It was really weird. And they said, they're talking. What do you want? Anything you want? I didn't understand half of what they were saying. I kind of got the gist of things
mhm,
because after a year of not being able to communicate in your native tongue and in English, that every time you did, you got smacked or hit, or we call it in Greece a vitsa. It's like a long
like a stick.
tree, like a stick, but it has thorns. So it's
Oof.
like it got rid of the English in my head. I don't know, or it buried it. So all I could
Yeah.
think of was hamburger. And to me, though, hamburger meant love. They misunderstood it. I kept saying hamburger, hamburger, hamburger. And they're like, the kid's starving because I had lost so much weight.
Let's get this kid a hamburger.
Well, that's what they were doing. They were driving me around all night to give me a hamburger. And this was at back then when the flight came from Greece, you would land at about 12:30 or 1 a.m.
Mm,
I don't know if I don't think you land now. Now it's like 7 a.m. You arrive or 5 minutes. Now this was when you'd
yeah.
arrive at like 12:30 to 1 a.m. And so they're driving all the way around to find a Whataburger, which was 24 hours. But I kept conveying when they gave me the burger, it's like hamburger. It's kind of like that's hamburger. So they're like, say what you want in Greek. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you spoke Greek. It was a
Yeah.
weird thing. They're like, we're your family. But it was odd. That's what I mean by odd. It's
And
like,
they did speak Greek?
yeah, they spoke Greek.
Oh, so that made it easier once you
Yes, but
made
they
that point.
weren't speaking Greek. But it's like I had forgotten that.
Right.
So when they started speaking Greek, I'm like, you speak Greek? They're like, yes. It's like, really? Okay. Everything was new again.
Yeah.
New but familiar in an odd way. So we got the
Wow.
hamburger. I did enjoy the hamburger.
That's good. Wow.
And then, got home and everything was odd. Of course, everybody was staying up all night long, kind of looking at me. I was like, because I
Yeah.
was quiet. And they're like, George, you never stop talking. I was a chatterbox.
Yeah.
It was
Well, your
just,
dad changed that, didn't he?
yeah. Well, I'm still a chatterbox, but it was a while till I acclimated.
Yeah.
And then it would be a few years later, he showed up back to the US.
Really? Was he trying to get back in your life right away, or?
He
I
was.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, well, we can move past that. I mean,
Yeah. No, it's just that, I mean, there's literally because he tried to convince the whole family that, oh, he made a mistake. He got on his knees. See, he played theatrics,
yeah,
especially for a Greek man of his time and generation to get on your knees to ask an apology. It's kind of like asking the sun to become the moon. It's not something you would see just because of ego and pride. So when he did, they're like, he's for real. He found God, something.
yeah.
And
Did you
and
forgive him? Did you ever forgive your dad for
oh,
that?
I did many times, and many times after I was 20, because like again, when he came back, my mother had gotten remarried,
Mhm.
and she had my sister, who was like one of the stars of my life, and there hit a point when I was going to hit 18 where he's like, all right, because I wouldn't see him once. I'd go on and off. Every time he would start shit or start mouthing off or start being cruel, not physical ever again, I'd
Yeah.
be like, I'm done.
Yep, I'm out. I don't have to deal with
Because I didn't
this.
want to be there. See, this is the thing. Why would you go with your kidnapper? Because I was trying when I skipped one part. It's odd how things come out in your head. When I
Yeah.
had come back, that very next morning, my grandmother pulled me to the side and she's like, now you're not going to tell your mother anything that happened there. You know what happened there. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay. And my grandmother was a spy for the Greek and British government during World War II. And she was sent to Auschwitz. That's where she met my grandfather. She survived it for 3 years. Like I said, we have a line of survivors in my family.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I love you, but your mother was nearly broken because of it. I didn't know my mom had been hospitalized at a time during the kidnapping. She had a nervous breakdown because, whoop, guess what? He was kidnapped.
And you were right. That probably really crushed her, the fact that you were warning her and you said, "I'm not gonna see you." And she put you in therapy. She had this therapist telling her that, "Oh, you just can't handle the divorce." So
A
she probably
seven,
blamed herself so
I'm sure.
much because of that. That's a bummer.
Oh, she went to all the people who told her that it wasn't true. And
Like
she's
your
like,
dad's friends?
yeah, because one of them was a relation of ours and
Ah,
someone we were very close to. And my mother told her, you lied to my face. And that person begged her for forgiveness. Well, I was like, you don't have to beg me, beg God, because karma's a bitch. And she's like,
mhm.
yeah, I don't want it to happen to you. So the thing is after my grandmother talking, says, you're going to have to be a soldier now. The same way you survived in grief, you're going to have to do that. Because if you tell her one thing, you're going to shatter her.
Yep.
So when my mother asked me how everything went, I was like, great. It's like a vacation. So that became the theme for a few years. George wasn't kidding. He went on a vacation. Of course, when I would hear from others, it would drive me insane. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd get angry.
Only I get to say that.
Yeah, but they didn't know. And so there
Yeah.
was this pretense. So when he came back, they're like, well, don't you want to see your father again? And I'm like, no. But what are you going to do? Everything will crumble. If I say no, now you have to explain why. Well,
Right.
because they're sitting here, because my mom's trying to be the good mom, saying, even though your dad and I are not married, that's still your father, and he's always treated you well. And so, how do you unravel that whole thing?
Yeah, that's tough.
So, for a long time, I didn't say anything. But then when she got married and had my sister, it like flipped a light bulb. He realized they weren't going to be back together again. So,
Right.
he actually started getting violent. I wasn't there. He'd start doing crazy shit like uh, calling up in the middle of the night. Someone's gonna break in the house and kill everybody. Just this spooky, stupid, stalking stuff. He started
Yeah.
throwing eggs at the guy that she was married. Just like idiocies. And then it
Yeah.
hit a point where my sister was 3 years old. And he had called me up. I went to meet him for coffee. And he says, next year you turn 18. I'm going to need your decision. I'm like, 4? He's like, well, you're coming back to Greece with me. That's why I came back here. I risked everything. I risked going to jail. I risked this so I could raise my son, so I could be with my son. And, da, 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 da. And I waited here till you were 18. And on your 18th birthday, we're leaving for Greece. That is, if you're coming with me, if you honor the sacrifices I made for you. I'm like, you've really bought into your own lie. Like, it's kind of like,
Yep.
it's really weird. So when I told him no, and by the way, then I said, on my 18th birthday, I'm changing my name.
Wow. How'd he take that?
That's what sent him over the edge. Because that's
I
like,
bet.
you're ripping his legacy out, his name. And I said, in the book, I said I killed George Alginakis and I embraced Molo.
Yep.
So after that, he started going unhinged. Come back home to my mother's house to see how she's doing. All of a sudden, he's driving around the house and he starts shooting up the house. We called the police. Of course, this was the time. This was the first time. The second time it happened, I walked out there with a pistol. I'm like, I'm right here. Just walked in. Like, you want to shoot me? Me. Leave them alone. Because
wow.
You have a 3-year-old sister there. So we started.
Yeah.
You get the police involved, and the police like, there's nothing we can do because nobody saw it except family. So we'll go file a report. We will go talk to him. This went on for about a year. Where then one night he called up and he told my mother's sister's husband that he was going to burn. When I was going on a vacation, he heard somehow that I was going to go on a vacation for 2 weeks, that he was going to burn the house with them inside, with my sister and her. And then I would know the pain that he felt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So to cut a long story short, I called up my Uncle Ted and we went and offered him a ticket to Greece.
You and him together. You're like, I know my Uncle Ted. I bring him along.
So we went there together. We spoke to him and we offered him 2 choices. He picked the ticket and he went to Greece, and that's where he lived for the rest of his life.
What was the other choice?
Not comfortable.
We'll leave it at that. That's fine.
Yeah. So a few years later.
Yeah. Wow.
A few years later, I had called him up to say, hey, no, I forgive you, when I was writing my book. And he's like, drop dead.
That's his response.
That was his response. I don't have a son.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck. God bless. Long life. And that was it. About 3 months later, he called to say, I heard you married a German woman. What's wrong with you? Like your mother. You can't marry a Greek girl.
Oh my God.
That was the message he left on my voicemail. I was like,
great guy.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. So that's who he is. That's why I said I had a experience dealing with giants since I was little.
Wow. When did you create George the Giant Slayer, the name?
August? No, after the Vegas trip.
Oh, okay. Recently.
Yeah, after the Vegas trip. Yeah.
Okay.
After the Vegas trip.
It just fit your
it did.
demeanor.
And it's funny enough, it did. And I had called up Gary and I was like, I gotta find a name. And I was telling him my idea. So we both came up with it at the same time. Because he's like, well, what's your motivation? And I went through it and he's like, okay. I said, this is what I'm seeing. He goes, that looks like the cover of Thor versus, Gore the God Butcher. I was like, really? So, because I had said, like American Giant Slayer. He's like, no, American Giant Slayer. He's like, just do it, George. And I was like, okay.
That's good. Gary's great, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Love it.
Guy's awesome. Friday Night Tights. Arguably the best show on YouTube. It is a great time. If you guys don't know Friday Night Tights, you're missing out. But so wait, you wrote a book about it. So this is early 20s. You wrote this book?
I started my 20s. It didn't come out.
Okay.
The first book till I was 30.
Okay.
It took me a few years.
And it's basically about your upbringing.
It is, but it was at a time where I had gotten divorced, and that was the final thing that I needed. I had been working on it for years, but I didn't have the glue to tie everything together. And so when I got divorced, I was like, I want to realize, how did I end up with the person that I ended up and making the choices that I made. So that's when I went back, oh, this can tie everything together, and
Mm,
reflecting back on life choices and where you came from and what you did. So I
yeah.
wrote the first one and then the second one. I
Where
did
can
three.
where can people get your books?
Barnes and Noble.
Nice.
Just at most places. I don't like to push Amazon anymore because of the fact of what they're doing with Tolkien. So
Yeah.
it used to be available at Amazon. Still think it is, but I've sent the publisher notice to pull it from there just because I don't support them anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, no, I don't want
What
to have
what
anything
is
to
the
do
name
with
of the book? Just to let everyone know in
Scarred.
case.
Yeah,
Hmm?
Scarred. Scarred.
Scarred.
And then
And
the
it's
first one, do
George
not buy
Mallow.
the first. Yeah, George Moe. Do not buy the first one. That
No.
was me rushing out. It's called Greek Coffee. Do not look at it. It's horrible.
Oh,
I
okay.
hate it. Yeah, no, no good. The second one, good. First one, shit.
Okay. So what are the differences? Were you describing the second book just then?
Yeah, Scarred is the good book. It's
Okay.
called Scarred, a Memoir. That's by George Muller. That's a good one. The
Okay.
first one is called Greek Coffee. But what I do in Scarred is I start telling a lot of the stories. I piece them together. My grandmother, when she was alive, she passed away a couple of years ago. Uh,
Sorry to hear.
yeah, she was 95.
Wow.
Tough lady. Like I said, she worked with the Greek and British underground,
Yeah.
saving British soldiers in Greece and fighting the Nazis. She was
Awesome.
tortured for 6 months by the SS and
Wow.
survived. Yeah.
She's
So
a badass.
she was a badass. She was a badass. And so I started telling the stories of all the survivors in my family and relating everything that I learned. Because it's, how do you share that with someone going, well, how does a 7-year-old? Because I didn't know how I did it.
Right.
So I started trying to remember like the images and the emotions that I felt. And a lot of times it would be like, you hear Superman calling the Super Friends, that gives you a certain oomph, or
Yeah.
Skywalker, and Vader and how they're talking. So
Or Captain
all of
America, like
it,
you
Captain,
referenced earlier. Yeah.
absolutely. So all of that imagery, that sound, it's like I would play it over and over in my head, and they'd become kind of this symbols. It's like America, thinking of the flag and July the 4th. Those things to me were like touchstones.
Wow.
And so I tie that all together in the book because my grandmother, there's this practice in Greece that they used to do, not very many do it now, where you drink Greek coffee, and then when
Hmm.
you're done, before the coffee is completely done, you use the liquid and they swirl it around to read the future. It's like reading tea leaves. And so she would
Okay.
read this and she would tell different stories. And so I use that mechanism in order to relay everything. Like she's sitting there telling my mother while I'm in Greece what's going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, your grandmother definitely saved your mother a lot of pain, because she would have blamed herself for everything you told her.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
that's I'm grateful. I mean, I've never met her, obviously, but um yeah, I'm glad that you had someone like her in your life.
Oh
How
yeah.
how do we portray this to people in the world? Like this, what you're describing, this ability to not be a victim. Not a lot of people go through certainly what you went through, but
Mm,
you know, not a lot of people go through what is considered like a macro danger, like getting
right.
kidnapped, being taken and being held and beaten and chained. Like, that's like a life altering
It
thing,
is.
especially to a 7-year-old. Most people think that these micro aggressions are life threatening or life altering when
Mm.
they're just spoiled. I can see the eye roll. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
no.
uh, it's like it's so embarrassing when I see people complaining about certain things, and I'm like, "You don't know how good you have it."
I
Like,
know.
we are so spoiled as society. It's like, how do we install that? How do we share? I can't even imagine. Like, I look back at my childhood, and I had it pretty good. Like, I had a pretty good childhood. Granted, my parents were divorced, and
Right.
I dealt with some stuff, but it was like, in the scheme of things, it was nothing, man.
It's
How do
it's
we do it?
odd. I talk with my best friend Sindek, like a brother to me, and we talk about it. And I'm like, I do not understand. It's like when I'm reading an article, and it's
Mhm.
like, so and so wants safe space from dangerous, hurtful words. I'm like, what? What? I'm like, come on. I said, I wish I just, I don't know. I think there's this lack of perspective. And I think it was Lord
Yeah.
Woodhousley who kind of stated the best, where he said, civilizations go through this cycle because of the fact that a democracy by its very nature is a temporary form of government, because at the point that the citizens realize that they can vote themselves in largesse from the treasury, like, hey, they're going to keep voting in candidates who keep giving them gifts, eventually you're going to financially crash it. But he says all these civilizations go through one cycle, which is we go from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from great courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, abundance to selfishness, selfishness to apathy, apathy to complacency, complacency to despondency, despondency to bondage.
We're
And I
getting there.
thought, I thought how to answer that question. I think the best way to do it in one way is, and I know it's going to sound corny, but it is looking and helping others who have been through something like that. And when you're around people who've gone through something horrible,
Mhm.
it you can't empathize. You can't fully understand it, but you have to take the rubber matting off the walls. You have
Yeah.
to expose people to life. When you expose them to it, it gives them an idea that yes, mortality is real. You too can perish. I think a lot of people, like what happened with the beer bug, it flipped them out because I think it was the first time that a group consciousness thought we could die, when we all know that's what happens to us.
True.
But it hit people on such a level, like, holy shit, I can die. I think
Yeah.
that's what's missing. But it's to survive anything like that, you have to take the rose tinted glass off. And it's actually liberating, because what it teaches someone is how strong they are. And if you find yourself that you're not strong enough, you can make yourself stronger. It's doing acts that make you uncomfortable. And again, this is going to sound corny. When I used to do book signing, someone asked, how do I get stronger? I'm like, well, what makes you uncomfortable? X, Y, and Z. Go start doing that. You
Yep.
have to do things that make you uncomfortable.
Mhm.
When you start doing that, you're like, hey, I did it. Guess
What's
what? I'm
next?
stronger. Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't have to go crazy, but when you start down that path, then it becomes heart and will can conquer all, which that's what I believe.
Yeah, Jay, Drunk 3PO, love that guy, fantastic.
Oh yeah. He's
The things
brilliant,
that
beautiful.
when he talks about what he goes or what he's done, his humanitarian work, like, he's done a lot of stuff. He's
Oh
been
yeah.
all over the place, and, his perspective on society is so much different than most people. Um, you know, uh, Getting a worldview and seeing what you have is so important, and you made a really good point. I never really thought about how over the past couple years, people were faced with death being a reality, and it reminds me of that saying, everyone has 2 lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have 1.
Yes.
A lot of people think that, especially younger generations, I mean, myself included, when I was younger, I'm like, I got the rest of my life to worry
Yeah.
about, like, whatever." And now I'm like, I'm pushing 40, and I'm like, "Oh, man, like, I'm about to have kids soon, like, I
Almost
wanna be
half
around."
gone.
Yeah, I wanna be around for my kids' lives for
Yeah.
as long as I can, like, damn, like, I gotta start really working to, like, create something for them, and
Right.
I think you nailed it, like, having well, it's cool, it's interesting because they faced death now, but they faced it in a wrong way because they're like, "But I'm a victim. I'm a
Right.
victim because 'cause I'm gonna die one day."
And
And
they
it's like,
ran away from it. I think that's the worst
yes.
thing.
Yeah, exactly, they're not facing it, they're hiding from it and blaming you and me, people who
Everybody.
are yeah, anyone who's like, "Hey, guess what? You're gonna die one day anyway." Like, you know, you can't be afraid of death. You have to understand that death is a part of life, and because of death, you need to embrace life and
Exactly.
live your best life,
That's
not
why I
live
always
in fear. Go
That's why
ahead.
I always end each video with, get out there, get busy living your best life now, because now is what counts. But there's a little trap in there. See, that's one thing I've been thinking of modifying that. because you remember Dead Poets Society? You ever seen that with Robin
I've
Williams?
I've seen it once, but it's been a long time, so I don't recall it.
Well, there's a great scene, you know, that famous one, Carpe Diem, seize the day, all the boys get up, oh, my captain, my captain.
Right.
And in that moment, that was beautiful. But when you watch the progression in movies after that, you start finding that a lot of people missed what that meant, and they started saying that I should live every moment only for me. It turned inward, becoming a selfish thing. Nothing wrong with being selfish a little bit, watching after yourself, but you have to remember the outside. Look at what you just said. In 1968, I think it was, or 67, we had the Hong Kong flu in the US. 100,000 people died.
I don't recall.
I think it's the 68 or 67. The dates I always get wrong by 1 year.
Okay.
I think, and it's 100,000 people. Nothing stopped. Nothing. Because people knew life goes on. I mean, you can't shut everything down so you can like walk into your home and go, oh my God. Because if you do it for that, what else are you going to do? Are you going to stop driving a car, stop flying, start walking across the street? I mean, if we live in fear, that's what people have to overcome is fear. And to overcome fear, you have to start with doing what's uncomfortable.
Yep. Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot, you know.
Brilliant.
It's like, you know, well, what and you actually kind of said it. Well, what makes you go uncomfortable? Well, do that, you know, because that'll make you stronger. I mean, I can hear him. I can hear his voice. I can't do impressions very well, but
neither can I.
Yeah, I can hear him saying that, and it's important. So what about let's get back to you though. What have you been doing? So you wrote a book. You know, you wrote a couple books actually, but what do you do for a living? You know, what do you
I'm in the medical industry.
Okay.
I'm in the medical industry, and we have a medical management company where we manage and operate medical facilities for doctors. That way, doctors can be free to do what they do, which is practice medicine.
Okay. So you don't
They
work for
have to-
hospitals, you work for like private practice
Correct.
doctors so they can
Do what they do.
be successful.
Yeah, because on the flip side of it, doctors for a long time, one, most of them are not businessmen. They're piss poor businessmen.
Right.
Two, when they're looking at a patient and starting to think, do I use this injection, which is cheaper, which is going to make me more money, but it's going to maybe extend their illness for a little while longer? Or do I use the better one, which I'm going to have to convince you? No, you go be the doctor and treat the patient the best. We worry about the money.
That's good. I like that. That sounds great. You know, take the power out of the industry that is for keeping people sick.
Right.
You know, so the doctors can be like, "That's not my problem. I want to treat you the best of what I could treat you."
Exactly. And trying to bring in this sort of Eastern meets Western approach now too, to try to prevent illness instead of just treating it. Because in Western medicine, everything is about treating the symptoms. Like, no, get to the heart of it. Like, why do you keep having acid reflux? Don't take a damn pill which turns off the spigot. You need to stop it
and it's all petroleum based too. Thanks, Rockefeller, for basically changing the entire medical system. That's something that I've been looking into. That's a crazy story, but you know, East versus West, like natural remedies that have been around for I mean, thousands of years. Suddenly it's alternative medicine.
Alternative. I know it's odd that they label it that way. It's been around since the dawn of time.
I know, exactly. Like this stuff, it's proven to work. Like how is that alternative? And your, you know, this medication system that you built up, you know, that's all again uses petroleum products. It's like, it's that's an interesting thing I was reading about the other day.
Tell me then, because I cannot remember where I heard it. I don't know if this is true. So since you're reading that, I heard or read in the last 6 weeks that if you were to look that people have 32% plastic.
Yeah, microplastics.
Bonded. Is that real?
You know what? I actually have an article. I have 1,000 tabs. But I have an article that actually talks just about that. Let me see if I can find it real quick. But it is true. Yeah, people are finding microplastics in human lungs.
Jesus.
And like a significant amount that they're like a little worried about it. Let me see. Can I find this real quick? Oh my gosh, I have so many tabs. It's
I've gone through that.
Oh, I found it. Here we go. Let me bring this up. Yeah, this is crazy, man. Like when I first saw this, actually someone from my chat was like, "Hey, you should check this out." And I'm sorry, I don't remember who sent this to me. But yeah, microplastics found in human blood for the first time.
Mm.
Um, tiny particles in almost 80% of the people that are tested. The discovery shows the particles can travel around the body and may lodge in organs. The impact on health is as yet unknown, but researchers are concerned as microplastics can cause damage to human cells in the laboratory, and air pollution particles have already known to enter the body and cause millions of early deaths a year. I mean, and then you think about all of the masks that people have been forced to wear, these like cheap, I mean, they're
The
not good
knockoffs, they're
masks.
not they're not the
Yeah.
real 95. They're the K95 and the K.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
exactly, and
horrible.
I mean, we're seeing piles of them in well, I don't see them myself from
Right.
because where I live, people don't throw trash on the ground, but, you know, I see these crazy pictures of piles and piles of it, but then again, people were wearing them, and they're cheap, and it's like you're breathing it in, and it's terrible.
You've seen
It's
pictures of
frightening.
them. You've seen pictures where they've had online, whether it's on Twitter or on Instagram, where they've shown the mask, like someone's pulling it off and you see all
Oh
the
god.
dirt and you're like,
Yeah,
do you not realize what you're doing? But that's what I'm talking about. Fear has paralyzed people.
true.
And how
Yeah.
do you get out of that fear? Is you have to
They don't
embrace.
want to. They don't wanna get out
But
of
you
it.
know how powerful people would be how many things would be better if once people embrace the fact that,
Well, George, you know, and
yeah,
I know.
yeah,
You know, I love that. I want every single person watching me to be as powerful as they can be, you know, and conquer their fears and
mm,
go after what they want. Because it's like, you know, the phrase "you can do anything you want" is such a it's not enough.
right.
You can do anything you want as long as you work your ass off to do what you want to do. Because without that second part, that first part is like, you know, it's false promises.
It is. But that's that participation trophy generation. You're all special. You don't help them by telling them they're special. You're
Right.
setting them up for failure.
Yes.
I'm sorry. When I was growing up, especially after it was odd. I'll tell you this quick story if we have time.
Sure.
Right after the kidnapping, I went back to school. See, I was held back a year. I had to take a test to get back into my school because they're like, he was gone a year. Blah 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 blah.
Okay.
And I didn't understand in Greece, we used for the division symbol was like the dot, the line, and the dot.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Well,
like a
here,
percent?
yeah,
Like a
like a
percent
percent.
sign?
That was
Okay.
how we used it for division. So when I aced all the tests except for when it came to division, I didn't know what it was. I kept asking. She's like, I can't tell you. You have to. I'm like, what is this? Because it was the arch with a line for the division
Oh,
symbol.
yeah, yeah, okay.
And I was like, what is that? So I failed it. They're like, oh, we got to hold him back. I'm like, okay.
Great.
So, but that all happened for a reason because I made my best friends through there. So when I got back, I never would get into fights before. And I don't know what had happened, but the first few months, you always have people who pick on you. It's
Mhm.
life,
Yeah.
especially in school. Oh, what did you do? You were held back, that kind of stuff. You retard. And so they push you around. And I don't know if it was because of the violence that my father showed me, but I was very
Definitely.
leery of hurting anybody. It's kind of like I was afraid of me.
Yeah.
So I got like the crap kicked out of me twice. I go to the principal's office and my mother takes to him like, hey, this is twice been beat up. I'm like, oh God. My mother, I said, I don't want to go, but she takes you. We got to put an end to this. Please don't take me there because I'm going to be humiliated. Anyway, so the principal turns to me and he says, George, it's time to stop being a lamb and be a lion. I'm like, what?
The principal said that to you?
Yeah. He says, you don't start fights, but if someone lays a hand on you, beat the shit out of them. Now, remember the
Damn,
rule to be honorable. He
based.
said, yeah, he's like, be honorable when they're down. You don't kick them. He's like laid it all out, but don't
Yeah.
start any because if you start any, you're going to get paddled. I don't know what it was, but it was like, bing. It's like the light bulb went off. I'm like, you mean I
Alright.
can do this? There was like a week where I think I went through half the bullies. And I
Wow.
like walked right up to them like, and they're like, what are you doing, George? It's like, just was waiting for them to like, oh, boom. And so
Yeah.
I never fought again. Uh, throughout that period. But that's something that helps people because two of those bullies became some of my best friends. Why? Because someone stood up to them, put them
Yep.
down. They realized they weren't the toughest on the block, that there's always somebody bigger and better, someone bigger than me, someone bigger than them.
Yeah.
And that made them to be humble. And with that humility comes lessons. Some
Wow,
of
that
them, see, we need some of that. It's like we don't want kids to be kids, we want them to be babies.
George, you are describing so many people right now in the SJW army that are basically bullies that nobody has humbled. And not only that, are being emboldened by this. I don't even know who it is. The Democrats, they love it because they are considered the saviors to them. And in reality, they're just a bunch of babies
Mm.
that are bullies at the same time. Participation trophy. Sure. You want to go bully this person because they don't believe the same person as you or the same thing as you? Fine. That's all right. We don't even care because we want that person to be gone from the internet. We don't want this. We don't want Joe Rogan
Right.
talking to opposing forces, even though it totally destroys our entire narrative. It's like that's it. They're emboldened. It's crazy, man. The world that we live in right now.
It's odd. Me, like, I love the discussion that we're having. And no
Yeah.
matter what it would be, whether we disagreed or not, every time you engage with someone, two things happen. You either confirm facts that you already believe in, or
Hmm.
you reflect and realize, guess what? Mine are flawed. That's what they don't want. See,
Yeah.
when
The
I engage,
reflection.
they the reflection, because whether I'm talking to you, if I'm talking to you, go, George, actually look at that premise that you're talking about. There's a flaw in there. I'm going to look at it. If it's wrong,
Yeah.
guess what? You just helped me to make a stronger argument, to be a better person, to think clear.
Yep.
That helps me. And that's what they're missing. That's what SJWs don't realize. The mannerism with which they are dealing with the outside world weakens them.
Yep.
Strong people do not go around going, oh, I need to cancel you. I need to. No, you don't. That's weakness. That's pathetic.
Yes.
When you're
Yes,
strong,
it
you
is.
go, I don't care what you say. Say it.
Hmm.
Go for it. Won't
Yep.
affect me.
What is that line from Game of Thrones? The lion doesn't concern itself
with,
with the
with sheep.
with sheep. Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you you talk all you want, like say whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Let the clan march,
Right.
we're still gonna shame them. I don't want to be their friend,
No,
but
but
like let them speak, whatever. Who
they
cares what
should.
people are saying?
Let them out themselves. See,
Yes.
the worst thing you can do is try to suppress what you consider evil. Because if it's really evil or bad, I want to give them 10 megaphones because everybody will hear it. And two
Yep.
things happen. It brings it into the light, out into the open. And people who feel they're drawn to it will go and you'll see, okay, I'm going to stay away from that person.
Yep.
Good luck. God bless. But when you squash it, you give it a mythos. Even if
Yeah.
it's the most cruel thing, like, oh, they're being oppressed. Nobody likes that. They won't
Right.
even think past who it. No, I don't care who it is. They're being squashed. You give it a sense of legend, and that's horrible.
Yep. That's a good point. One thing that the political left, or the SJWs,
Right.
not only can they not self-reflect, they look at everyone that isn't in their group with and with the thought that they can't self-reflect either. They think that we can't do that. They don't think that it even exists. It doesn't work in their world, so they
Right.
can't understand that that's what other people do. Like the scientific method. Hey, if it doesn't work, we'll find something that works. And oh, this thing works, so we're going to go with this now and then maybe disprove that.
Right.
We're in a constant state of I want to know. I want
Flux.
to
Yeah.
yeah, I want to further myself. I want to remain fluid and able to go with what is logical and what it tends to be true. And if someone disproves something that I believe, then guess what? I don't believe that anymore. And, I can change.
Right.
They don't think that anyone can, it's like, I find that to be a big shame as well. It's really sad.
It is. It is because think about what they're telling you. Think about what they're saying about themselves. Radicals of any stripe, I don't care, left, right, anyone who's radicalized, The
Mm,
very first thing that happens, in my opinion, to people who are radicalized, is it strips every ounce of genuine humanity, not humanity as in consciousness, morality, who they are. They cease
yeah.
being George or John or Mike or Adam. What they become now is just dogma. That's why they can't answer it, because it's like when you teach
Wow.
kids only how to take a test. Well, that was the stupidest thing that ever came out in this country under
Yep.
Bush. Teach them to take the test so they can pass it. Why? Teach them the math and they can pass any test.
Yes.
Instead, you're going to teach. No. So what they're doing to these people is, here's your script. Here's your sacrosanct, Bible. Read it, absorb it, memorize it. But
Yep.
when it doesn't have answers, what do you think a person does? Well, they feel shame, so they get angry because they're afraid
Yep.
to look foolish.
Yeah, their worldview is being
And
challenged.
right. And Twitter didn't help. Twitter didn't help because of one thing. Twitter became Fight Club for people who don't want to get hit in the face.
It's a good point. Yeah. I mean, but that they can easily escape too. It's like
Right.
they can leave the ring if they want to, instead of being
Right.
forced to face because there might be someone that they're getting in an argument that might make a good point.
Right.
And instead of having to stay there and let that settle and maybe change
Report.
their worldview,
Right.
they're like, that block, I'm out, and then
It's
it's like,
worse. They report them on top of it.
right.
It's like they want to
Well,
remove them from I don't want you here in my world. I never thought in my life, like, if my grandparents were alive, they
man.
love Dr. Martin Luther King. When I heard 2 years ago, it was like Shapiro and someone else tried to go to like UCLA, or it was in Berkeley. They were trying to give a speech
Okay.
because the students wanted to segregate the college by race. I'm like, you understand, a man sacrificed everything to eradicate this,
You're right.
and you want to honor him by going back to segregation? Like,
They don't get it. That's such a huge insult to that man. Like I don't think any of those people actually listened to his most famous speech.
right.
Because if you listen to it, he's talking about not caring about characteristics you can't change and focusing on being a good person. Essentially, I paraphrase it. I don't want to paraphrase it, but
No. I know. It's like, look at the
that's what
content of
that's it. Yeah,
character.
that's his message.
Yeah, content of character, not color of skin.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Now
never
it's
looked
everything
at.
to them.
I never. Again, growing up, where there was the kidnapping plus the way I was raised,
Yeah.
I never looked at. I was like, that's John, that's Mark, that's Robert.
Mhm.
It was the first time.
Not that's Black John.
Right,
That's
no.
Mexican Robert. Like, what? That's so
I
weird to
never
think about.
understand that.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, you
odd.
said it. You just said it. It's dogma.
Yep.
That the character has been removed. All it is now is what they're told to focus on, which is color of your skin, sexual identity. I mean, those are the two things, or mental illness if they have any, because that's also a badge of honor that they choose to put on there.
Understand that. We used to help people who had. Now we're like, no, it's good to be mentally ill. I'm like, huh?
Right.
That's weird.
I'm neurodivergent.
Yeah, I know that word. I saw it in your tweet. What the hell is that? That's the first time I've heard of neurodivergent.
Well, that's what they've coined and taken. I mean, neurodivergent used to just mean a different way of thinking, right? An alter, like autism or being on the spectrum. But they've now kind of co-opted that word. Same with like the word liberal. Like liberal from the 90s would be considered a conservative today.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I feel like I'm a liberal
Free
from the
speech,
90s.
freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Liberty, liberal, like that's really what it is. Like libertarian. They're not liberals, they're authoritarians.
Oh,
But neurodivergence is what I consider basically a fancy word for just mental illness,
okay.
being. Now that's kind of a spicy take, and I pissed a couple people off, but I don't care. Like, whatever. It's just my opinions. I put them out there, and
Yeah.
Twitter's kind of my my
I love
spicy
your
space.
Twitter. It is. I love Twitter, and I'm still
Yeah.
hoping that Elon pulls it off.
I think he's going to. I don't.
I
I
hope so.
mean, bar them
Well, they've called him to
making some
Congress
sort of
now, which I don't know
yeah.
why. They
Well,
can't do
because
anything.
it's a private company. I mean, and people are like, no, like there's shareholders. Blah, blah, blah. Dude, I don't even fight battles on Twitter. It's wonderful. I have such an incredible
You just
following
like
that
lighting them up.
I'll put something out there and I'll see people arguing for, I mean, sometimes weeks. I've seen threads go weeks
Oh,
where
I haven't
people are
seen that.
back and forth on like my most viral threads. Like there's a couple viral threads that I have out there because of this whole Roe v. Wade thing that's happening, which is I'm going to talk about tomorrow. But we don't
No,
have to
listen
get
to
into it.
that.
But
That doesn't bother me.
you mentioned it earlier. The
Yeah, yeah.
leak is really
The
crazy.
leak bothers me because
Yes,
a lot of people are not talking about that. To me, is more important than Roe v. Wade because
absolutely.
it sets it. Well, now you have the justices are not going to trust each other. I don't like all of
Yep.
them. Now the
Neither
clerks
do I.
aren't going to trust each other. Was
Hmm.
it a clerk or was it a justice? If it's a justice, that's worse. That
Agreed.
justice should be impeached. I don't care.
I
Left.
don't think it was a justice. I don't think it was a justice. There is someone that seems to fit the part. It's
Hmm.
not confirmed yet. I posted about it. I just wrote this is
Okay.
suspect
Well, they need to be
with the connections. But
punished.
they're doing a full investigation. They want to know. At least the SCOTUS put out a statement like they confirmed that um the not the brief. What was leaked? What is it
That
called?
100-page. See, one person said
Yeah,
brief.
what is it?
One said opinion. Pete, opinion. Not a rough draft, but it was like an opinion rough draft because it was all
Yeah,
written by Alito with the judge with the various justices' input. But he's the one who wrote the
right.
opinion. But it wasn't called draft. It was. I have the word here. Hold on.
Yeah. What
I
is the
know
chat? You guys got me?
it.
What are we looking for?
It is
Court
called.
opinion, dissent,
No, it's not the dissent.
first
It's
draft
court
of
opinion.
opinion.
Court opinion.
Court opinion. Thank you,
Yeah.
True King. Yeah. Of unbreaded, certainly you are. Yeah, that's crazy though, man. Look, people this is all I'm gonna say about it. Ready? Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg thought it was a bad law
Mhm.
because we are the United States, not the American federal government decides all. Look,
Correct.
each state can legalize it or make it illegal per what the citizens want. I mean, look at Texas, Idaho. I was it Idaho or Ohio? I don't know. One of the middle states. I don't remember exactly which one. Just made it outright illegal.
Right.
Every single state where it's illegal has exceptions.
Correct.
Rape, incest, all these like, criminal stuff. But hey, there's certain states that will probably legalize it, like California, where they have that weird law that if
Oh,
the mother doesn't,
up
the
to
mother
18
doesn't,
months they want to
if you
push
don't,
it now.
if you don't touch the baby after it's born or some crazy thing, and then it's not your fault if the baby dies, it's like, wow,
Yeah,
like that's California though. Hey, if you want to live with
that's
zero
your choice.
accountability, go to California then, and don't live in Texas. Don't live in I don't know. I can't think of. I don't know
Kansas.
abortion law. I don't really pay much
Right.
attention
But you're
to
making a
that.
point. But see, that's the point. Roe v. Wade has nothing to do with abortion. It's about returning the power to the states.
Correct.
We were designed so you could live in a place that most best suited you.
Exactly.
And then if you want to change it, you can get out there, put a machine together, get a grassroots organization, and change it.
Yeah,
But that
look at New
way,
Hampshire.
like that way, if you want to live where
Libertarian.
it's illegal, that's up to you. But yeah, I think
Right.
it's a good step just
I think so too.
to return it to the states. I think everything should go. Our federal government is too big, too bloated. We
I
lose our
agree
rights.
100%.
We lose our
100%. George, we got we're already almost an hour and a half in, and I got a bunch of super chats.
okay.
I feel like I could chat with you for forever, man.
Me too with you.
It's
Thank you,
great
my friend.
conversations. I want to read some of these. Jim Bob for 10 says Crigler Coffee got another shout out on Timcast last night. Tim's
See?
coffee shop exclusively being filled with Crigler. In a couple years you might be a guest on Timcast. I miss that dynamic. Well, that's cool that he's shouting me out. I didn't know that he actually has a coffee shop. We don't actually talk anymore, which is it is what it is. But you know, what are you going to do? The Last Crow is celebrating 9 months as a member. Thank you, Last Crow. He says, enjoyed this. You should have a guest talk about music and drugs, how it tears you down and overcoming it. Never met anyone else who's also experienced it. Yeah, yeah, I guess maybe I don't. Someone who's known for that. Yeah, I guess I can look out for it. Cal G says, George,
Okay.
he's got a beautiful soul. Godspeed, man.
Godspeed, you, Cal.
Thank you, Cal. Culture Casino for $20. What's up, Culture Casino? How you doing? He says, gotta love this. Gotta love the Dix Division representation. Hail Adam, an honorary Dix, and an OG Dix, George the Giant Slayer. Thank you, Culture. Thank you. Thanks, mate. Kinnell's missing Y chromosome says, here to show support. Keep on fighting, guys. Thank you very much. That's funny. Yeah, Ryan's going to be joining me later on in the month.
Awesome.
Jason Dixon for 10 says, bro, last night Tim told his audience, 40,000 people, he is going to have a coffee shop at his new compound and that he will exclusively use your coffee. Ian backed him up and said, your coffee is the best. It's because it is the best.
I got a lot of his coffee.
Yeah, you were telling me. Thank you. I really appreciate that support. It's the freshest coffee money can buy. No
Absolutely.
joke. And I want to get that blend that you were you keep
It's
asking
my
about.
favorite. I will buy it by the pound.
Yeah, I'll get it. Yeah, and that's the thing. Everyone else only sells these little packs. Like, man, I'm
I got the
wholesaler.
big bag from you. I got the big bag.
Yeah. They don't. I wonder. I don't even know if they do the big bags, or if they fresh roast it. I don't know. It's all right. They're all posers.
Yes, they are.
Jim Bob again says, really like this guy. Made my jaw drop a few times. Incredibly inspiring. I agree. You know, it's people need to be exposed to being uncomfortable, you know, and they don't know what it means. They think being uncomfortable is being told something insulting on the internet, like, oh, my whole everything's ruined. It's like, no, why don't you try getting, you know, kidnapped and brought to the mountains of Greece and being smacked whenever you said you miss and love your mother. It's like that will wake you up, you know. And that's yeah, these people, man. Jim Bob again says, also this guy with Jordan Peterson sounds dope. Yeah. A lot of the things that you were saying, it's just basic logic.
I think
to
that's
me.
why, yeah, it is. That's why Peterson's so popular, because common sense, most of it.
Yeah, common sense. Just like, how do you argue against common sense? How do you argue against this logical way of being accountable for your actions and striving to be better? Like, I just don't get it. These people don't want to get it. That's really what it is.
Right.
You know, they don't want to. They want it easy and to remain the victim.
Because they're not saying that thing. Like, there's something. I just had finished a video, and after I watched, I'm like, oh, I said that. Because sometimes, you know, you say stuff, you're like, I didn't realize it. But there is the sound between words are some of the most important. The space between words are some of the most important sounds, I think, that people will ever hear. If you focus and listen to those who want to have influence or power over you, hear what not only look at what their actions are, but hear what the gaps are saying to you. When I hear someone who's radical, who's saying, you can't say this because it hurts my feelings, what I hear is obey or be chained, obey or be canceled. It's like, what are they not telling you? What are they trying to hide? Because you just brought up common sense. And I go, I don't understand how you could veer away from common sense unless you want to turn the world upside down.
That's what they want. They do. They want to tear it down. You know, Antifa openly talks about wanting to bring down the system. Biden got elected and they're like, we don't care about Biden either. Like, we want the system gone.
Right.
You know, BLM, they were like openly talking about, we need to get rid of jails. We got to get rid of courts. We got to get like, whoa, no. Like, please, like, that's not, I mean, there are actual criminals. There are people that will kill you because that's what they want to do. That those people exist. They will always exist. I want innocent people to be
Yes,
free. I don't want, I would like to make sure that the justice system works, and that, I mean, this whole Johnny Depp thing, like this, he was basically guilty and now is trying to prove that he in fact
it isn't.
was being abused. Yeah, exactly. I
Think
don't
about
know.
that just for a second. What it must be like for one of the most prior global superstars and a
Yep.
man, no matter how much they say. She knew what she was doing when she played that. I watched an hour of Ricada when he was saying, think about what Heard told him. Who's going
Hmm.
to believe that you were abused by a woman? Because you'd have to
Yep.
admit that. And he just wants everybody to know. I think he just wants to clear his name. I don't think he cares a lick about returning to movies. That's my feel. Do you feel that, Adam?
Oh, absolutely. No,
Okay.
and he even said, he's like, no amount of money would bring me to do another Pirates movie. Like Disney basically agreed with Amber and said, "You're cut, Johnny." And it's like, F you. Like, no, like so you believe her. Like you didn't even talk to me. Well, I don't know if they
Right.
asked him or not. It felt like they just
But
cut
it felt,
ties because,
yeah,
yeah, but he felt it. And so it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think if Johnny Depp is gonna continue doing movies, if he is gonna do another movie, he's gonna do it on his own. He's gonna do with his friends.
Right.
Like the reason he did all the um Rum Diaries and Fear and Loathing, because he was friends with the guy. He loved his stories, and that's
Oh,
the
Hunter S.
reason why
Thompson.
Hunter S. Thompson. Like he was actually friends with the guy, and like
I
really
didn't know that.
he found the Rum Diaries. He was hanging out with Hunter S. Thompson and was like digging through his stuff and found the Rum Diaries,
Wow.
like the original story, and he was like, "Oh, hey!" And Hunter S. Thompson was like, "Oh, there it is." And then he
Yeah.
like, I want to make this. And then that's actually how he met Amber
I've never
Heard. But
seen it. I want to see it now. I've never seen the
I
Rum Diaries.
I
Is it
haven't
good?
either.
Oh, I
I
want to
haven't
see it
seen
now.
it. But and it's interesting because that's how him and Amber got together, is because of that
No, no,
movie.
no. Now I
But
get it.
he was talking about that. Man, it's a really interesting. I was watching basically all of his deposition,
Hmm.
or not his deposition, because he was on the stand. Yeah, when he was on the stand.
Was
But
he
it was
speaking
interesting.
on the first day? Because it was really weird when he was speaking. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It was
No, it's okay.
odd where he was
Yeah,
like,
he
I
was
don't know.
just, I don't know.
I was like,
It
Johnny
will.
Depp doesn't talk like that. I was like,
Well,
but now,
look at what he was abused his whole life. His mother was abusive, um, and he started taking drugs at like 11 to like numb the pain from
mhm.
dealing with an abusive woman in his life. And then, and enter Amber Heard. They were in a relationship, and he kind of like reverted to that.
Oh, I see.
Um,
I missed that part. I didn't know that he was
yeah,
abused.
yeah. So so when the first day or two of the first day of his testimony was basically laying that groundwork. So it was
Gotcha.
reliving. I mean, you could tell when he talks about something, he's reliving it. And
Right.
that's, really good actors are able to do that. They relive emotions to pull them out and use that in a scene. And he's also a musician. And I know also like good musicians, maybe not necessarily good musicians, but emotional musicians. Because some
Right.
musicians aren't emotional. They're very
They're
technical.
technical. Yeah.
Yeah, some musicians are very emotional, and they're different types of musicians. But you can tell he's a very emotional musician, and uses his music to try to like get through pain. Um, so I think it was just him really like slowly making it through, laying out why he even did drugs. He
Right.
even says, he's like, I don't do drugs to party. I'd never done drugs
To
to party.
cope, wasn't
That's
it? To cope or survive, something was like that.
Yeah, exactly. He took drugs to escape. He did to numb himself from the pain. And I was like, damn, like this is
Right. He
hard. It's
wasn't.
hard
He
to
wasn't
watch.
a. Yeah. He wasn't like a guy who's like, I just want to get high. He was doing it to
Right.
live. It's
Yeah.
odd. I kind of think that he went with, if you want to look at it therapeutically or subconsciously, like he went with Amber Heard to finally face and resolve his issues with his mother emotionally.
Ma-
If
yeah,
you
maybe
marry
true.
someone who's the same way
Hmm.
and you never dealt with it, it's like, okay, it's like, got to put this to bed once and for all.
That's a good point. So he's facing a lot right now. And I think It's not even about the money either. I don't think he cares about the money. I think he
Name.
really he cares about his kids. He made that very clear, and he cares about what people think about him. Like
Yep.
every single person that has taken the stand that knows Johnny is basically saying like he was so nice to me. He treated me so well. Like he went above and beyond for me. He bought like I hear countless stories about what this man does from my man Darth Call, who joins me on Mondays.
Okay.
Huge Johnny Depp fan. This guy he keeps his Jack Sparrow outfit in his car, just in case he's near a children's hospital,
Oh wow.
and just
That's
goes
a good
in
goal. That's a
and
good
just
goal.
meets just to make these kids feel great. That's my favorite story about Johnny Depp. Like, to be one of the most famous people, he doesn't have to do that.
No,
He
of
he
course.
doesn't
Most of
but,
those
like,
are, their asses. They don't care about the
yeah. It's
people.
like he cares about others. He cares about it. It's like, yeah, he made that stupid joke about the president in 2016 or 2017 or something. But he apologized, and it's like, all right, whatever. It's like everyone makes mistakes,
At least he
and
apologized.
he did. He apologized the next day. No one likes to focus on that, or the fact that he was in the middle of a crazy relationship with an actual abuser.
Nutbag.
Yeah, exactly. Nutbag
I had
shitting on
that
his
with my
bed.
ex-wife. Not the
Oh
shit
man.
part, no, but I understand it. No, it's because we all have our demons to face.
Yep.
We all have our demons to face, and the
Yes, we
sooner
do.
we face them, the stronger we get.
Exactly. Face what's uncomfortable, and you become stronger. Let's see here. Where were we? Mr. Wolfgram. This one's good. He who has conquered himself has conquered the world. Well said. I don't know who said that. Someone.
Sun Tzu?
I've heard that many times. Yeah,
Is it
maybe.
Sun Tzu?
Yeah, it could be. The program says, yes, sir. Totally agree. I was told the same. If you are protecting others, then you let them have it. Love your work, Adam. This is my kind of honest conversation. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great conversation today. Jason Dixon says, Twitter Fight Club is for those who don't want to get hit in the face. Fight them in real life and talk to them about rule number 1, then punch them in the face. Yeah, maybe. That was, it reminds me of who just got enough. Mike Tyson just
God.
beat someone up on a plane. And I guess the guy was like harassing him and being an asshole to Mike Tyson. It's like, I mean, I'm not condoning violence at
No, I
all,
know. But
but
they say it went on for like 20 minutes. Like he was supposedly nice to him for the first 5 minutes. Like, here's your autograph. I really cool, funny, haha. And then the guy just got drunk and belligerent and started calling him pussies. Like, oh, pussy, 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 pussy.
wow.
And
Yeah, I
Mike
didn't.
Tyson, I'm sorry, like the guy should like wake up a little. This guy bit an ear off a guy. Like,
Yeah, it's true. Maybe you should be a little careful with your words.
Yeah.
I would not want to get hit by Mike Tyson. I'll tell you
No,
that.
I don't care what age he is.
Right? Random Eskimo says, trust the science goes against science. Great tale, George. I'm going to find your book. Awesome. Right on. And yeah, just a reminder, everybody, George actually has a YouTube channel and he's been making videos. You only have maybe 7 or 8 videos right now, but
No,
top
50.
quality.
Tomorrow's
50 videos?
Tomorrow's 50.
Wait. No.
Yeah, tomorrow's number 50. Yep.
Well, I was just looking at your site and I only saw. Hold on. I got to bring it up and show everybody your site.
Yeah, tomorrow I have a new video coming out.
Okay. I was just looking at your home.
Ah.
Because look, if you just look at your home page.
Oh, I got you. I don't know why it does that. Yeah.
But if you go to videos, boom, there they are. Okay. It's not that many. There's not 50 videos here. Is there?
Yeah, if you
Dang. Yeah. All right. Well, I apologize.
Yeah, no
anyway,
problem.
doesn't matter. The quality is there, and you definitely should check it out because all this insight that you're hearing from this guy seeps into all of what he's talking about. You do a lot of similar things to Nerdrotic, where you're talking about movies and stuff and shows, but you're starting to. You just did a great video on Elon Musk and the Twitter takeover. That was a great video. Definitely go check it out. In the description below, you can find his Twitter and also his YouTube. Definitely go give him a follow. I can't believe you only have almost at 12,000 subscribers. Definitely deserves a lot more. Please give this guy a
Thank
follow.
you.
Sparky says, rather than learning to overcome or work around their flaws, kids today are taught to embrace them. Great point. Yes, they are. Yeah, and use them as a shield. You
Yeah,
know, not just
definitely.
embrace them. It's like, it's like they're flaws that are fixable, or not necessarily fixable, but things that they can move past. They're staying there because they'd rather use it as an excuse. Oh, but I'm this. Oh, well, I have, this. And they're also convinced that the rest of the world hates them for those things. It's like, I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. I don't care what you call yourself. Don't push it on kids. Let
And
kids be kids. Let them do their own thing. Don't try to teach it like you think you're morally superior,
right.
because you're not. It's, there's certain lines that I just do not cross.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they're all crossing those lines. It's like, all right, step back. All right. Again, libertarian, leave me alone. But as soon as you start going for kids, like, we're going to have issues, you and I.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kids, I mean, think about it. Even in the animal kingdom, most animals protect their kids. It's
Correct.
abnormal to want to harm children.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point. Well, they don't see it as harm, though. That's the thing. They think that they're
Right, but
morally correct.
that's what's wrong. I've been trying to figure that out for a while. How can
Mm-hmm.
they believe? I mean, in prison, who are the one group that all prisoners unite around to really despise?
Yep.
Anybody who hurts
People
children.
people
Yeah.
mess with kids. Yep. Because they know kids can't defend themselves.
Right.
Kids are eh,
We
exactly.
know.
And yeah, we know.
There's a big secret. I forgot to tell you. It's like there's an open secret in this country that no one ever talks about. I tried for years and I'm still working on it. Is that no one realizes that the amount of kids that go missing and kidnapped in this country equals the size of a city of San Francisco each year.
Each year.
Each year. And they don't
That's
talk about it. It's like it's never discussed. Like once in a while, someone gets kidnapped and makes news, but they don't stay on it. We actually lose that many kids.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Eliza Blue. She's incredible. She actually just wrote her first piece for Blaze
Oh,
TV. I'm really happy for her. And Twitter is absolutely hiding her post about her first. And she's on a mission to help those who get kidnapped, those
oh,
human
I'd love to
trafficking.
help her. Yeah.
Yeah, she is fantastic. Name's Eliza Blue.
Cool.
And of course, yeah, I'm just really excited for her. She wrote her first
Wonderful.
thing, basically about how Twitter being bought by Elon, it's actually a good time to, fight, because I mean, child CP is on Twitter. Like, it's being shared, and it's nightmare, especially for the victims who are then use Twitter and see their own image being shared. Which I know of a case that it's John Doe is who she I don't know the full details of the
Right.
case, but I know of a case because I try to, anytime she wants to come on my show, it's like, you got a spot, so she's fantastic. K. Ray says, George, I'd love to see you write a children's book. I'm trying to find more authors kids can actually look up to, and you'd be an amazing addition.
Thank
There we
you.
go.
Thank you. I've
Right
thought
up.
about it.
George the Giant Slayer. I'm serious. Like,
That's good.
fighting giants, and the giants are the people that are no, the giants are the ideas
Yeah.
that need to be defeated to become the best version of yourself. You're welcome.
Good.
You
I
can have
like
that. You can have that one for free.
Thank you. I like that. That's why when you watch the trailer for any one of the videos, the giant's head is never shown because it means, it's that.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
I like that. George, what a pleasure.
Thank
Got to
you.
have you on again.
Well, I'd love it. Anytime.
Awesome. All right, everybody. That's the show. Definitely go give this wonderful guy a follow. In the description below, you can find all of his details. Tomorrow, I got Quarter Black Garrett joining me. Alex Stein, Primetime 99, is going to be on my show on Thursday. And then Elijah Schaefer from Blaze TV is going to be on Friday. So, everyone, thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. Good night.
Good night.